Hello everyone, Taki here. As promised, today we're going to take a look at the Android 7 firmware on the new RG552. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this, so let's get started. First, let's go over some of the important specs as they pertain to using this device on Android. As you can see, we're running on a 64-bit ROM, which means we will be able to try out GameCube emulation in this OS. One thing to point out here is that our CPU clocks are running 100 MHz lower than they are on Linux. We also have access to two thermal sensors that we can pull while using this firmware, and I'll have data visible on your screen throughout parts of this video. When you first boot up the device, you will see that we have the ATV launcher. They've gone ahead and installed a bunch of apps for you out of the box, including paid emulators like Mupen FC Pro, Drastic, and Yaba Pro. There are a lot of old emulators here that you'll probably want to remove since they are basically bloatware apps to fill out this menu. There are also a lot of system applications that you can hide to clean up your screen. The main thing that I want to point out here is that you do not have the Google Play Store. To install applications, you need to sideload APK files. You can do this by putting APKs on your SD card and installing them with the file browser, or you can use ADB. If you're not happy with this launcher, you will also need to install another one because this is the only launcher on the 552. I've gone ahead and configured the launcher the way that I want it to look, as well as installed updated versions of apps that were pre-installed out of the box. I have apps at the front, then emulators, followed by Android games. All of the system apps that I do not need have been hidden one by one. You'll also notice that there is no numerical display on the status bar battery icon. It's really difficult to see where your charge is at a glance without pulling down this menu, so I've installed a separate app that can provide this functionality. For benchmarks, our Geekbench 5 scores on this device sit at 264 single-core and 714 multi-core. The Vulkan test is not available to us, but our OpenCL score is 541. Because I did not get a chance in my last video, I want to focus on the screen. This panel is running at 60 Hz based on my testing, and it does not seem to have any issues with screen tearing. The touch sampling rate for this panel is set to 70 Hz. This 5.36-inch display is the best part of this product, hands down. It's the best screen that Ambernick has ever used, and it's probably in the top 3 screens that I've ever seen in a handheld thus far. Color accuracy is good, as is the maximum brightness and the white balance. The viewing angles on the 552 are also exceptional, with near 90-degree visibility on all angles. The large 5x3 screen also means that we have a much larger 4x3 centered image when compared to the native 4x3 screen on the RG551 MP. I didn't get a chance to mention this in my last video, but the controls on the 552 are solid. Compared to the old RG350, this D-pad seems to be using a rubber membrane that is probably 5 to 10% less stiff with improved usability. I saw some people worried that input latency would be an issue now that we're on Android, but I'm not seeing it, even in situations where precise input is required. The polling rate of the two analog sticks is set to 100 Hz, and I assume the same follows for the rest of the buttons. As I mentioned in my last video, there are sound delay issues in the Linux firmware. Apparently this is already solved, but I did want to check the Android system to see if it had the same issue. Based on what I can see, we have less than half of the audio delay on Android versus Linux. With the default config in RetroArch, it seems to be around 100 to 150 milliseconds. By manually changing the settings, you can bring this down to around 50 milliseconds. With editing software, it is really easy to take the game footage and count the delayed frames if you want to check for yourself. Anyway, we have Android this time around, which means that we have plenty of games available to us, many of which support the native controls that we have here. First up, we have Pascal's Wager at medium settings. Next up, we have Pocket RPG. This game does not have gamepad support. The Android port of Adventures of Mana does have gamepad support, and it works well. Minecraft does run well on this device, but I did run into an issue. The right analog stick has some access issues, which aren't a problem in apps where you can redefine buttons, but they are a problem here. And finally, we have Terraria. I talked about power consumption under Linux in my last video, and I found that the values that I listed are more or less the same under Android. The highest consumption that I've seen in my testing is just over 11 watts, which gives you over 2 hours of battery life in a worst case scenario. The problem with Android when compared to Linux is that the fan curve is far too aggressive for smaller CPU loads. Just to demonstrate, here's the fan ramping up to 100% when the CPU is only in the low 40s. Because the fan noise is annoying on full power, I wanted to see what would happen to the system when I unplugged the fan. I let the CPU temperature climb to 70 Celsius and then I took some readings. The backlight temperature is around 46 Celsius and the processor area is around 44. The fan is essentially acting as a heatsink while it's unplugged, and it is sitting at around 42 Celsius with the other side of the device in the mid-30s. I took the backplate off to get some more readings, and I'm not really seeing anything here too alarming. Our PCB is large for this processor, so there's a lot of room for the heat to dissipate. From what I can see, this CPU does not really need the fan going full blast, even under very demanding loads. Because we have root access over ADB, I'm going to look into modifying the maximum value of the fan to be more reasonable. That's all fine and well, but what can we do with this new chip under Android that it and the RK3326 can't do under Linux? The answer might surprise you. There are a lot of systems that the 3326 has the ability to emulate, but most of the ones that people care about in this generation run poorly. Even when you're focusing on older systems like SNES and PS1, we have new emulators available to us and more options to take advantage of our larger screen. For DuckStation, we have the ability to use widescreen hacks and increase rendering resolution on some, but not all games. Nintendo DS was available to us back on the 3326, but the emulator is a pale comparison to the widely used Android port. Here we are using Drastic with several enhancement options. PSP emulation is starting to flourish on this generation of handhelds, but the library still has games that can be too demanding. In this section, I put together a big list of games running from 1 to 3x native resolution when possible. Some games that struggle on the older RG351 still struggle here, but there are huge improvements all around.
I must return fire!
Try double jumping by pressing the button while jumping. More monsters! Press the button and give him the old spin kick.
Crouch. Press the X button while crouching to do a high jump.
Round one. Fight!
Our better processor also makes light work out of Sega Saturn games that were unplayable in the last generation. Like PSP, Dreamcast is another system that people are really looking forward to being able to play. Here we are testing the performance using Redream and a collection of demanding titles.
Shut up and move your butt!
Yeah! Move it!
Well, come on, D. Let's get going!
Suspect seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect.
Ah, Ine-san. Ine-san.
Ryo-san. I'm alright, but Hazuki-sensei...
I did not expect that Citra would work on this system, but I was able to get Ocarina of Time 3D running. It's not really playable, but it is cool to see it in action on an RG device. I talked about N64 on Linux in my last video, so I wanted to benchmark the performance of several demanding games on the 552 using Mupen FC.
Got pulse power!
Who's this guy?
If you think you're coming this way...
This final section is a big one. Playable GameCube performance on an Anbernic device. I did a podcast interview talking about some of what makes this possible not long ago. When I had the chance to see this handheld 2 months ago, I told one of the engineers at Anbernic how they could make a custom version of Dolphin that would run better on their device. Here we have Dolphin MMJ, which does have graphical glitches in the games that I'm featuring here, but there are still plenty of games that I would consider to be playable.
Final battle. Fight!
Can't keep up?
Good afternoon. Ah, yes. Yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon, Harry Potter. You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself. Beechwood and dragon heartstring. 9 inches. Nice and flexible. Stand over there, on that platform, to try your wand.
Here we go! Hey, Snippy, don't get cocky.
Slippy, you've already got bogeys on your tail.
If you made it this far in the video, I want to leave you with my closing thoughts. I've been making videos on this channel for over 2 years now. I originally started this channel by reviewing an Anbernic device, so the company has always had a special place in my heart. Since then, I've reviewed at least 10 different devices from the company. While no device is perfect, none of those products had any big flaws that would make them unplayable, in my opinion. I don't know how to put this into words, but making my last video was really the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do. There was a landmine on a field that everyone knew was there, but the only thing that mattered was who stepped on it first. I never thought that I would have to be in a situation where I would have to self-censor to maintain a relationship that I've had for so long. That is why I didn't even give a second thought to posting my last video. A lot of people think it must be cool to be in my position to have some input or ability to help steer products in the right direction, but the truth is that it really sucks most of the time. Even when potential mistakes are so plainly obvious, the majority of times they can never be avoided. More times than not, I feel like a fence trying to stop a tsunami. At least where this product is concerned, I was in a lose-lose situation. I either don't make a video to protect the company's image at the expense of all the people that trust me here on this platform and have given me my voice, or I make an honest video and lose a relationship with a company that I love. With a high price tag and high affiliate commission, the incentive is much larger to always pick the first option. I also do not subscribe to the idea that a company should not be required or expected to provide working software for their own product, especially when we're in the premium price range. It really sets a bad standard. Anbernic is a company that makes Linux devices. They've never made an Android device before the 552. Even though it should not be the case, the Android version of the 552 is a much better product despite their lack of experience with the system. The minor flaws that it does have can easily be addressed in newer Android ports. At least in the case of the Android side of the 552, you're not forced to seek out community firmware because it can be fully enjoyed with the software that it ships with.